Greetings, Zimbabwe. Welcome once again. This is Zimbabwe Daily, and we're coming to you live on our platform. If you are new to this page, please share it, invite other people, share this platform with others, and let's have more conversations that help us build our nation. My name is Yvonne Muchaka, and today we are talking water, human rights, and gender. What does that even mean when we say water is a human right? And when we say that water has been genderized, what does that even mean? I have my usual guests in the studio and others who hopefully will join me very soon from their different bases around the country. So I'm going to ask my guests to introduce themselves. Over to you, engineer.
Hello, Zimbabwe. My name is Happy Mombiza, and I am one of the normal and usual guests on this show. And
Right.
I'm a water technocrat, if so to speak. I have studied water all my life. I live for water, and I would like to see our nation profiting from the local capacity that we have as a nation. So this is why we are here in the first place, and I would like to thank you for inviting me to the show. Thank you, Yvonne.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll go to you, Mr. Denford. May you please unmute your mic?
Right. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for inviting me to this program. My name is Denford Halimani. I am a member.
Oh no, and we have lost Mr. Halimani there due to network all the same. Mr. Mzingwa, please unmute your mic, Mr. Mzingwa.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. I was offline, and unfortunately, we have challenges on network. What was the question?
It wasn't a question. I was just asking you to introduce yourself to the people.
Okay.
All right. My name is Adlife Mzingwa. I'm the national coordinator for.
Mr. Denford, I'll get back to you. Mr. Mzingwa, please go ahead.
My name is Adlife Mzingwa, and I'm the national coordinator for Community Water Alliance.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Denford. Your microphone is on mute again.
Right. Good afternoon. My name is Denford Halimani. I'm a member of the Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights. Thank you.
All right, you're a member of the Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights. Thank you so much, Zimbabwe. So we have our panel of guests today so that we can interrogate the topic water, human rights, and gender. I'll start with you, Mr. Denford. What does it mean when we say water is a human right?
Well, I think the answer to that question is fairly simple and straightforward. Everyone needs water. We can't live without water. In fact, our life revolves around water in so many ways, directly and indirectly. So water is a basic necessity of life, and as such, it is also one of the most fundamental requirements of human beings. And this is why, in fact, the legislature in this country recognized the value of water and actually encompassed it as part of fundamental rights in this country.
Mm-hmm. Right. And okay, there we go. There we go. Awesome. So when we talk of water being a fundamental human right, we've also asked the question, what about gender? You know, someone in our audience was just saying, gender imbofi yakapera munyika munomu. When we are saying that, when we are talking about gender and water, what are we talking about? I'll come to you, Mr. Mdzingwa. You're the one under CWA who is always interacting with residents at water points. What is it that you have observed, and what does water and gender really mean?
Thanks very much, Yvonne. We have network challenges. I hope I'm being clear there.
Yes, you are.
Firstly, I want to state that before I delve into gender in detail, I think the first issue that I want to say in terms of observation is that there is lack of information on citizens around the legal content on the human right water, to say what does it carry when we are looking at the legal content on the human right water, which speaks to issues around availability 24/7. That's we are supposed to have the water 24/7. Of course, subject to availability of resources. That water has to be accessible economically and physically. That water has to be acceptable in terms of its taste and odor. It has to be acceptable. And lastly, that the water should be of good quality, and it should not give problems to issues around waterborne diseases like typhoid, cholera, diarrhea. So that's the first observation that we made as an institution. Lack of understanding on the legal content of the human right water, as well as the principles that underlie promulgation of the human right water, which speaks to access to information, and then issues around also gender, which I'll also delve into, as the question that you've posed. When we're looking at gender, basically, we are looking at the roles and the responsibilities that are ascribed to women and men by society. So in the water sector, in our country, in the context of Zimbabwe, we have a patriarchal system, just like in African state, where fee-free household chores of fetching water are confined to women. And that speaks to issues around the burden that is then carried by women and girls because of our patriarchal system that gives the role or responsibility of fetching water to women. So for majority of us men, it's just a matter of coming home, and majority of them, that is for majority of men, and finding water already at household level, even where there is no water at the tap, because like I've said, it's now ascribed to women and girls because of our patriarchal system.
Right. Right. Thank you so much. I'll come back to you, Denford, to then say what we understand, what Mr. Mdzingwa has spoken about, the issue of our patriarchal nature of our society and how different roles are ascribed by our society. Now we are coming to the issue of water. We've mentioned that it is a human right. That means we all should have access to that water. And we're talking of clean potable water here. Now, are there any legal instruments that are available for me as a resident to then say, I have not received water on my tap for the last 4 years? What should I do? What recourse is there for me to, what legal instruments are there available for me to make use of so that I can cause government or whoever is responsible, to provide me with water?
Thank you very much for that question. Yes, there is recourse if anyone feels that they do not have access to water or to clean water, potable water as indicated in the Constitution. They can actually go to court and try to enforce that right. In terms of Section 85 of the Constitution, any person can actually approach a court alleging that a fundamental right or freedom has been or is likely to be infringed. So the courts are open And I think in the recent past, we have had some groups of people, especially the Community Water Alliance Trust. We have worked with it. We've gone to court to try and enforce some of the rights. Of course, we don't always have to go to court when we have issues like this, because some of the issues are quite complex. They cannot be resolved by courts. We also need to engage those that supply water, including the government as well, because some of the issues revolve around government not availing adequate resources to enable local authorities to supply clean water. So yes, the option of engagement as well is highly encouraged. It is difficult, but in certain instances, it might not actually be helpful to even go to court, because at the end of the day, courts are not there to try and enforce impossible demands. So it's quite complicated to deal with these issues. But to answer your question, yes, there are instruments that allow for aggrieved parties to approach courts to enforce their rights.
Now, if the court route doesn't really yield much, or it takes forever to get a recourse, then what is left of me as a citizen? What is left of me as a citizen? I think because we're making do on a daily basis just because there's no water, and we have to make a plan because it is life. We need it every day. We need to bath, we need to wash, we need to cook, and we need that basic commodity. Now, if the courts are not able to deal with the problems, I think a Community Water Alliance, like you have said, the Combined Harare Residents Association, they've taken, councils, etc., to courts over the provision of water, but to date, there is nothing. What do you think people should do in order for the issue of water to remain on top of the agenda?
All right, I
Mr.
assume that question. Oh, that's Mr. Mzingwa. Okay.
Mr. Mzingwa, your
I think
microphone is
firstly, I
on.
want to acknowledge. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Thanks very much. I think first I want to appreciate the role that has been played by Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights, Aleman in particular, in terms of enforcement of that right. I know he has been not only a legal practitioner, but a comrade when it comes to enforcement of the human right to water. And we've had a good working relationship in terms of enforcement of that right on a pro bono basis. So I want to first, make that acknowledgement. And then first, beyond litigation, but before I talk about beyond litigation, I want to first state that we had a case that was handled by Aleman, looking at the human right to water. I think there are some feedback that we do not give. Before
Mr. Mzingwa, are you still there? All right, network is really playing havoc on us. At this moment, I'm not exactly sure if it's the Makomborero Haruzivishe case at the High Court or what. I don't, at the Magistrates Court or what, I don't know, but the network is really poor. I'll come to you, Engineer Mbiza. Engineer, from our previous communication and as we spoke over the last 5 weeks, there are a number of issues that you have raised that are more technical than it is. How we speak from a layperson's perspective. Now, is it possible, engineer, to actually provide our nation? I know the other time you said we do have enough water in the water sources to supply our nation with water. Now, I know this is our concluding conversation around the water series. So I want you to come in to then say, if water is a human right, And if women, girls, and children are more affected by the failure of government to provide water in our homes, what is it that then needs to be done in order for us to bridge this gap between it being a human right and a gender issue, and the technical difficulties that our councils, our governments seem to be having in providing this precious resource? Sorry, you're on mute, engineer. There
Am
you
I
go.
on mute? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Yvonne. And thank you, panelists for being here today to speak with us on this issue. I would like to acknowledge also the presence of my senior in high school, Denford Halmani. We were together in high school. He was my senior.
Oh,
So
nice. Did you know that
yes,
Denford?
no, I don't think he remembers. But I used to play soccer. I used to play soccer anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yeah. So back to the issue. Yes, Yvonne, I have previously said that we do have enough water in the nation to be able to avail every Zimbabwean with enough water. So I want to also say that the government has done quite a lot in terms of infrastructure. If you look at, for example, the sources themselves, let's talk about Kariba Dam, for instance. If you look at that dam, it's actually the biggest man-made reservoir in Africa. You know, and I think that's very important for people to realize that we are sitting on a lot of potential, and what other people have done elsewhere, Yvonne, is that if you look at Libya, for instance, they had to import water, like through a desert, so they had to build a man-made reservoir, like a man-made river, you know, to make sure that the whole country is water. And we can also do that, with Kariba. We can do a Zambezi to Limpopo, and if you look at the terrain, it allows for gravity flow. We don't have to be pumping anything, and we can create a green belt for the whole nation.
Can we?
Using just one available resource. And I'm talking about just Kariba Dam. I'm not talking about all these other dams. So when you talk about access to water, I believe that we all have access to water. What we lack, I think, the first thing is that you know realizing that we are living in a crisis, which is also impending disaster. But we actually have the water. The water is available.
Do we
But
really
what
have engineer? Are you speaking from an engineering perspective or from the real? Because on the ground we don't have water.
that is exactly what you think, but we have access to the water because I'm saying the resources are available in terms of infrastructure. We have dams with the water, but the people now do not have the water. So as a nation, I think what we need to do is we need to look at how then do we bring the available water to the people. In what quality, Yvonne? Because access has everything to do with quality.
Right.
You see now, because that's what makes us to be able to use the water. And I believe that we also need to understand that there is need for public-private partnerships in this country, Yvonne, because I think local authorities on their own, they're struggling financially, and also in terms of capacity itself. And I don't think our legislation, Aleman can help us on that later on. I'm not sure if our legislation harmonizes the issues to do with the public-private partnerships, because that's where most of the capacity is going to come from, to be able to take the available resource to the people, You see, so that's a very important factor that we need to look at. And also locally we have a lot of capacity. From the people who are our own locals, Zimbabweans. They have a lot of capacity to handle these issues, and we need to look at also issues to do with increasing the access to available water, the water that is already in our vicinity, like water that we have already taken from the dams, and we have treated it, we have used it. We need to start recycling this water now as a nation. Look at Namibia. Namibia is also a country in a desert, but these guys, they don't play around, Yvonne. It's just here. They are recycling their wastewater. And recently, we have heard about water issues in Cape Town. They had a water crisis recently, and then they resorted to desalination and recycling. So you realize that recycling our wastewater is something that is very key. And here locally, we are not doing that. And currently, unfortunately, we don't have any wastewater treatment plant that is retrofitted enough to be able to produce potable water. But this is something that is very possible, Yvonne. And we don't need any external, help. This can be done by local Zimbabweans. So we can recycle our wastewater to increase our supply. But we are talking about supply now, and from the water treatment plants to the people, there is a problem, and the problem is issues to do with infrastructure, which is used for conveyance of this water, and these are pipes and reservoirs. Our infrastructure is broken, Yvonne. We've got failing pipes. We've got pipes that can no longer support the current population of the nation. Go to any city, we've got 32 of them. You realize that the people in the city and the infrastructure, they are not tallying. And we need to upgrade our infrastructure. And the way we need to upgrade our infrastructure is in such a way that we should look at the demand. And we also need to look at the projections in growth of the populations and say, how much water do we need now that this infrastructure can carry? And how much water are we going to need in the next 5 years? What about in 10 years? We give our infrastructure a design life of 20 to 40 years. We can do that. And then we also need, as people now, Yvonne, from the point of being the residents ourselves, being the ratepayers ourselves, we need to help our urban local authorities, Yvonne, to be able to collect the revenue that they need to be able to provide us with the service. So there is need for improvement in revenue collection. And this is key because you realize that our country is around 60% non-revenue water. And when we talk about the right to water, Yvonne, we are talking about the right to access. You see? And when we talk about the right to access, and this is the available raw water that I'm talking about. But there is always a question globally that, does this right even talk to treated water where resources have been put? Someone comes in, they treat the water, and then the water now is available. It's now palatable. It's now potable. Do you still have that right? You see, this is a fundamental question that now you need to realize also that water itself is an economic good. It is an economic good. As much as we have a right to access, water it has to be regarded as an economic good. So we should always be willing to pay for water.
Right, we should always be willing to pay for water. Mr. Hardlife Mudzinga, do you agree with what the engineer is saying? Of all the things that he has spoken about, do you agree with fundamentals that need to be in place for us to claim the right to water?
Thanks very much, Yvonne. I think the first one is that when we are talking about the human right to water, we are not specifically saying it has to be accessed free of charge. I think that's a fallacy in terms of people who think that those right to water are asking for a free service. That is not correct, and that is not what is contained in the human right to water. And when we are talking about the human right to water, we are talking about potable water, not raw water. So I think that's important to clarify that point. He made reference to recycling. Yes, I agree, but he was tilting towards called the toilet tap, where water that is coming from the pollution system is then treated. The trend world alluding is that toilet tap is normally where you have deserts or where there's in season droughts. That's where you have. But I'm not saying we have to close that option, because remember we do have changing and varying climatic patterns. So it's an option that is important to talk about when you're looking at toilet tap. I think I want to just speak around 2-3 issues. Then I close my case in terms of my submission here. The first one was to first, complete my submission that I was making when I had a disconnection, an internet disconnection.
Yes, sir.
I was saying the litigation that we had with our legal practitioner, Mr. Aliman, forced the Ministry of Finance to allocate financial resources to City of Harare. Although we did not, won the case, but to ensure that the case is overtaken by events, the ministry disbursed funds. So it's not just a matter of looking at winning a case at the court, but the reaction that is done by government from the national tier to the lowest tier is important when it comes to realization of that right. So man was displaced during that period. So I think it's important to highlight that. But beyond, look at advocacy, engagement of relevant and strategically positioned actors in the parliament on budget issues. Because remember, when we're looking at water, we're also looking at access to resources that are required to fulfill the right. So what we need to do is to embark on advocacy interventions where we engage parliament, because remember, budget is a legal document that is passed in parliament, so that we have meaningful budget allocation to water and sanitation.
Right.
Prerequisite for the realization of the human right to water. Then we also need to deal with issues around citizens. Africa, so that we enforce the right. But beyond this, we have other interventions that I think are very important that we need to deal with. You see, even if you raw water resources, that does not translate into access to water. I'll give an example of Harare. With the current rains, good rains that we have, we've printed what.
Hey, network is really dealing a disservice to Mr. Mdzingwa there. Yeah, we've had fairly good rains, and that translates to good supply of water. But to turn that supply of water into something that is potable is an issue. We understand that there are international human rights laws, that we can always look to in addressing the inadequate access to water services. And especially now during COVID-19, it has had a toll on women and girls. And we understand that the General Assembly has asserted that water was necessary for a dignified life. And the UN Human Rights Council also reiterated this assertion through Resolution 15.9 entitled Human Rights and Access to Safe Drinking Water and Sanitation. Mr. Mdzingwa, you are back. You may continue with your submissions.
Thanks very much. I think to cut the long story short, I was saying you also need to look at the infrastructure. Example that we have two water treatment plants, Prince Edward and Model. If they are open, the basis is 1,200. So what it construct new water treatment plants, they can produce at full throttle 700. What it means is that we need to go beyond around availability of raw water, and access to water is
All right. So I think in understanding what Mr. Mdzingwa is talking about, Engineer Mbiza, he is saying that even if Morton Jeffrey was to work at optimum level, even if FEL was to operate at optimum level, even if all the current infrastructure is to work at optimum level, we will not be able to supply potable and clean water to every resident that is available. I mean, if I got Mr. Mdzingwa correctly, what do you have to say about that?
I've previously said that we definitely need to improve our infrastructure, right? Not just in terms of capacity alone, but even the technology that we are using. It's important. It's very important, Yvonne, to understand that we are spending several hours treating water that could be treated in a matter of minutes. Technology has moved so much, Yvonne, such that I'll give you an example. Right now, we are busy using chlorine.
Why are we standing where we were? Why are we standing in 1964? Why are we still back there, engineer, when technology is moving? Zimbabwe is training engineers every year. We are having people like yourself, who are well traveled, who have had to look into other nations and experience the kind of, infrastructure route development that has taken place over the years. And here we are, your own country, you are saying our infrastructure is moribund. Now, who is supposed to take the responsibility of bringing us new technology?
Oh, well, you see, Yvonne, like I have said before, we are we are in a sorry state in terms of the infrastructure, right? But it's very important for us to understand that infrastructure is a product of money. You can't talk about infrastructure without looking at the economics of it.
We have diamond. What money are you talking about?
I'm not sure about diamond. I'm not sure about any other money. But as far as I know, I've got no access to that money. And the person who's living in Budiriro there, if the money is there, they don't have access to the money in terms of the infrastructure availability. But
Right.
what I can say is that we need also to make sure that we're moving with the times. Let us improve our infrastructure, Yvonne. Let us improve even the technology that we are using. I will always talk about this because maybe it's because this is what I studied in school.
Right.
I understand a lot of treatment technologies that are available. And now as a nation we are still using only the conventional water treatment systems.
Which
And
are the
for an
systems
example,
that are available? Which are the systems besides the conventional water treatment are available to us?
there are a lot of new filtration systems, like new filtration technologies, advanced water treatment systems, Yvonne. And this is why you see people are able to treat wastewater and convert it within minutes. Wastewater can be converted into potable water. You see, it's happening elsewhere, but we don't have access to such kind of technology because of financial issues. I don't think we have enough money, to tap into those kinds of things. But at this point in time, we need to understand our problem. If it's the infrastructure that we are saying it's old, if the infrastructure that has no capacity, like we have said before, I heard that there's a national water audit that is coming up. The national water audit should point to all these problems. It should audit the systems. It should audit even the billing system that I was talking about earlier on. We need to be able to get revenue from the service that is being provided already, and then slowly we build up our reserve, and then maybe we can be able to get the money to improve our infrastructure. But our infrastructure definitely needs to be improved.
Mr.
There's no
Denford,
question.
is it possible for me to make use of this kind of information to actually sue government for them to release resources maybe, or to cause for this technological development to actually take place? Is that something that is possible for me to do?
I think that's a very difficult thing to do. Why do I say that? Because the people that framed the Constitution were very deliberate in saying that the state must take reasonable legislative and other measures. And I want to emphasize this, within the limits of the resources available to it, to achieve the progressive realization of this right.
When we
What this
say
means,
available resources to it, is that not ambiguous?
it's not ambiguous. It's a recognition that the government does not have infinite resources. It does not have limitless amounts of money. And therefore, you can't go to court and force the government to do practically anything that you think you want the government to do, because that depends with the availability of resources. So they put that clause in the Constitution to try and deter a flood of litigation going to court. Otherwise, we were going to have a situation where everyone that believes the government has failed on practically anything would then go to court and try to enforce their rights. And the problem that would arise from that is that you would go to court and get it. Suppose you get an order proving that you were justified in going to court, but at the end of the day, the government does not have the capacity or resources to implement what you want, and the government does nothing. In fact, that would seriously undermine our justice system and basically our system of governance, because it basically means nothing can be achieved through the court process. So to avoid that, we need to go to court when we have evidence that they have a minimum amount of resources that can be channeled towards a basic and fundamental need. For sure, we can go to court and try to enforce our rights, particularly on a fundamental issue such as water.
Yeah, because my worry, Mr. Danford, is that our infrastructure is 30 years backward. So, in other words, we are trailing in terms of development by a gap of at least 30 years. Surely somebody has to take responsibility over that. Who does? Who should then take that responsibility, even for developmental purposes? Even if we are to try to do right now, we need to plan to cover the 30-year gap first before we can even project into the next 30 years. So can we agree that resources can never be enough, but we can at least plan better?
Well, brilliant observation. That's a good observation. It's an observation that is also linked to our political realities. Do we have commitment from those that are in power to try and address this issue? Because it's an issue that they inherited from 1980, and we are now having to deal with dilapidated infrastructure. Is there a policy or program to address this issue so that we can end up with clean and potable water as required in terms of the law. We have a situation which has been obtaining in this country since at least 2000, where we have a government being led by a political party which is different from the local authorities, which are coming from a different political party. And this has actually paralyzed the operations of local authorities in terms of provision of basic things like water. And I don't think there's harmony between these two parties to try and find a long-term solution to these problems. In fact, I get the impression that there is bickering with both parties accusing each other of causing the problem that we have at the moment. The government says it is the opposition that is in control of local authorities, and therefore it must be responsible for to supply safe and clean water. And the local authorities are also saying, no, it is the government that is frustrating local authorities from implementing programs that would ensure that these services are provided. You would recall that years ago, I think we had a situation where the government ordered local authorities to forfeit recovery of money from residents, which effectively paralyzed them to a certain extent. But there's also a problem of corruption as well in the local authorities. So my advice, which has nothing to do with the law here, is as Zimbabweans, we have to realize that we are in a very, very bad situation as far as provision of basic services is concerned. And in fact, we have lagged far behind other nations, as Engineer Mbiza was saying earlier on. And we really need to put our interests, our selfish political and personal interests aside and prioritize the national interest to try and find a solution to this problem. I think there are so many people who are awash with cash in the world who may want to invest in this country in a number of projects, provided that there is certainty, there is consistency of policy, there is guarantees that their investments will be protected. And these are things that require a holistic approach involving government and all other interested stakeholders. So until these players stop playing politics with these issues, we are going to continue for another 30, 40 years without these issues having been resolved. Before we know it, we will probably be living in the Stone Age era where we don't even expect the government to provide water. We incur resources to drill bores and provide for ourselves because the government can provide. I'm sure we can already see that happening in not just water but roads and all other basic infrastructures. So it's not going to be resolved by going to court. A problem like this, it's a political problem that requires a political solution. If parties can't realize that, then we have a big problem.
Political problem that needs political solutions. In closing, we want to close this conversation. We've been having this 5-series talk show on Zimbabwe Daily where we're looking at water and access to it in different formats. And as we close, we're talking water, human rights, and gender. Why are we so focused on these elements? Is because in times of crisis like this pandemic that we're in, we realize that nations are provided an opportunity to enact necessary changes, and COVID-19 has presented us with a prime occasion to bring discussion around the intersection of water and gender to the forefront of human rights. And indeed, we want to improve access to water and sanitation globally. And as Mr. Danford has said, Zimbabwe's problems are more political rather than technical. We have the technical know-how. We have people who understand what their rights are, but the court route is not the best because we'll always hit brick walls as the governing party versus the one at local government. They're always bickering back and forth. It's them that approves the procurements. It's these ones that come up with the policies. And at the end of the day, it is us, the residents, who get to suffer. Now, in closing this conversation, I'll just ask you for your closing remarks when it comes to issues to do with water, human rights, and gender. What is your own, what is the feeling and the direction that our nation should take? I know, Mr. Halimani, you mentioned quite a number, but just in closing, any parting shots before we go to Engineer Mbiza?
Shows is that despite the challenges that we have as a country, as a people, we should not give up. We should not be resigned to our fate. If we have an issue that may require us to rush to court, please do not hesitate to approach us. As Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights, we have been doing this for quite a while, and we have quite a good success rate in terms of obtaining some reliefs that may actually be very important in the short term. So people must not be resigned. I know most people have bores. Some people are now fetching water from community bores. Some have private bores, etc., which seems to suggest that some people may have given up getting water from the local authorities. I myself have not received water, I think, for the past 12, 13 years now. And I also I also get water from a bore. Sometimes I buy when the bore is dry. But I'm not going to give up because I'm not receiving water. I will go to court if I have to. If I think I have a good case which I can seek to enforce, I will go to court. But otherwise, the bigger solution obviously lies in citizens also trying to engage with the people that they put in power to try and see if they can address some of these serious problems that we are facing.
Awesome. Thank you so much there, Mr. Halimani. Over to you, Engineer Mbiza. Any parting shots?
Yes, thank you, Yvonne, and thank you, Zimbabwe, for being with us through this series. We look forward to having more of these up until we have the proper things that we are looking for. Up until every citizen in this country has got adequate water. Up until every citizen in this country is able to handle and manage the available water that will be there. So I think what I would like to say, Yvonne, is, you can see that from what our good lawyer is saying there. We do have a problem, and we definitely need to have that solved, because that problem affects what the technocrats know, and it affects what the technocrats can do. You see now. So we need to fix the governance and the politics around water in our nation, and also we need to fix the issues to do with human resources themselves. I believe that there is a lot of personnel who are not qualified to do the things that they are doing in this nation. And I believe that we'll see this when the water audit is done. We'll definitely want to see who is doing what, and what are they qualified to do that, because there are certain decisions that are made, Yvonne, that you wonder what's really happening here. So I think we need to look at our human resources also, and also, we also need to invest the available resources into understanding our problem. Like the water audit, what is happening? I think we are on the right course with this water audit. And also, recently I heard that Price is looking for some sort of a consultant who will be helping, I think, government to do these water projects. I think that's very fundamental. Decisions have to be made by people who are also qualified to help. You know,
Right.
it's very important, and this brings in the issue of public-private partnerships. They are key in development. They are very key, and one of the most important things that I would say is that let's look into what is new and where are we going as a nation in terms of the water industry. It has to be revamped. We need to improve it. And this is the responsibility of us as Zimbabweans. No one is going to come from Mars to help us. We need to do this for ourselves, and we need to stop relying on donors. This
Right.
donor dependency syndrome is a big problem in this country because people always think that we are going to get donors to do this for us. No, we have to stop thinking like that. We have to have our homegrown solutions to our own local problems. And because we understand our problems, we are the only people who will be able to provide the solutions, Yvonne. And now to us as residents, my parting shots will be to say, let us not normalize polluting the environment and polluting water. And this goes to people and the local companies, you know. Let's not normalize that because this is a norm. It looks like it's very normal that, oh, I can just, dispose of my dirty water anyhow without pre-treatment. It's very normal, and that is not good. And there is a culture of brushing teeth with running water, Yvonne. We have to save water. We have a scarcity, we have water problems, and the available water, we need to be able to manage it properly, Yvonne. These are just behaviors that I'm talking about, you know. And we also need to be realistic about our situation in terms of pricing the water. I've said this before. 1 liter of water cannot be priced the same with 5,000 liters.
Right.
Let us be realistic. Let us, as much as we think that, you know, we have a right, let us be realistic about our rights. And also, we need proper costing of service provision in terms of water. If we are saying the minister is giving Harare $3 million US a month for water treatment, I think as the residents, we have the right to understand what exactly is happening with this money. Where exactly is this man? Are they coagulants? You know, is it disinfection? Is it fuel? Is it labor? Where exactly? So we need to be able to account for every single penny that we are spending on these resources and on these services. So I
Right.
think those would be my parting shots. And thank you so much for having me on this show, Yvonne.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Engineer Mbiza. And Mr. Mawesera, thank you so much for joining us, though we were coming to the conclusion of our conversation. Today we're talking water, human rights, and gender. And I'll come to you, Mr. Mawesera. I want to hear your mindset. I want to hear your thinking around this aspect of water, human rights, and gender as we conclude this conversation. And you have been a town clerk for Bindura at some point and a chairperson for a body that brings all the town clerks in Zimbabwe together. Now, would you say at policy level, councils appreciate the fundamental human right to access to water? And as well, do councils appreciate the gender dynamics and the disproportionate suffering that women and girls go through when there is inadequate access to water?
I think the appreciation of the human right nature of water and the gender aspect of water is quite low. There's a need for a lot of work in that area, to work on the residents themselves to ensure that they appreciate when you say right, what do they mean? also the councillors themselves, so that they appreciate the rights nature of water in the management. So the whole council need to have a further appreciation from the way it looks now. That appreciation is very, very low. It is in the constitution, and if anyone were to sue a local authority for that, the constitutional court, it would be an issue. But I think we now need to get into it, have sessions, train people around it, and increase the appreciation of water as a right. In terms of gender, I think there's a lot of work that's happening in gender, but the focus has not been on water and sanitation. There's a lot in terms of capacity development, in terms of income generation, in terms of a lot of other things. But the issue of water has been neglected in all our gender issues. And I would want to encourage, going forward, all those agencies, ministries, and partners who deal with gender issues to make water and sanitation a primary issue in their activities, so that gender and water, gender and sanitation become very, very important, because these are the anchors of development. These are the anchors of that can reduce poverty in our situation by reducing the morbidity, the rate at which people still sick, because we are not developing, because lots of money is going into dealing with sickness. So that's how I look at it in terms of the appreciation of water as a right in terms of our local authorities.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Mawesera. 2 minutes that you've been here, and you leave us with this powerful thought. Councils need to be educated on this right, so that when they are making policies, when they are pushing different agendas in the council chambers, they're pushing the agenda of maintaining and growing the capacities to improve the livelihoods of the people. Thank you so much, Mr. Mawesera. Late coming, but powerful PowerPoints that you left us with there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Engineer Mbiza. You've been my resident guest together with Mr. Mawesera over the last 5 weeks as we explored on water. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, Yvonne.
Awesome. Thank you so much to our lawyer who's coming through from the Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights, Mr. Denford Halimani. Thank you so much for joining us today as you shed more light on the human rights aspect of water. May God bless you.
Thank you so much, Yvonne.
Awesome. And thank you to you, Zimbabwe, for being with us over the last 5 weeks as we spoke water, and more water. Water, sanitation, and hygiene services are imperative and important in our society, as these form the anchor of everything that we do. Without safe drinking water, adequate sanitation and hygiene facilities at home and in places of work and education, it is disproportionately harder for women and girls to lead safe, productive, healthy lives. Across low-income countries, women and girls have primary responsibility of management of household water supply, sanitation, and health. Often fulfilling these roles precludes any other occupation or participation in education, and their marginalization is compounded by the indignity and insecurity of having nowhere to go, nowhere private to go to the toilet. So addressing the needs of females in relation to water, sanitation, and hygiene is a key driver in achieving gender equity and locking the potential of half of global society. And when we talk of the role of human rights in addressing wash access, we need to ensure that everything that we do will ensure the right to enjoy adequate living conditions in relation to housing, sanitation, electricity, water supply, transport, and communications. As we have been learning over the last few weeks that water is an important part in our society, and expansion in rural areas, expansion in urban areas is based on the supply of this precious liquid. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me and participating in our conversations. May God bless you, and may we continue to like, follow, and share our Facebook page. We want to bring in new series. Tomorrow, we are coming in from the communities talking about water as well. And this is the Independent Month. So do look forward to some more programming as we talk to our yesteryear heroes and today's heroes as we look into the issues. And a news that just came in from the Magistrates Court. Makomborero Haruzivishe has been sentenced to 14 months in prison for the charges that have been leveled against him, incitement of public violence. Thank you so much, Zimbabwe, for joining me. My name is Yvonne Muchaka, and with the team behind the scenes, thank you so much, and God bless you.